Hello, everybody, and welcome to this session from Bradford Literature Festival's digital program. It's a mixed program this year, and I know our guest this year our guest today has now having experience of both real life events and the online ones. Dara, you're home again now, aren't you? From recent travels to a real life event. I believe you've been in Cheltenham.
Yeah, it was pretty good. It was really strange to do talks in a event that wasn't like over the internet and actually speaking to people, which was bizarre. And it was also good to just it's a completely different experience to like the online chats, and so it was very cool to be able to do that again. I think it's been like nearly a year and a half since I've done it.
What a year it's been! What a year it's been! So, by way of introduction, I should introduce you properly before we get chatting. Dara McAnulty is a 17-year-old naturalist and writer from Northern Ireland, and he absolutely burst onto the scene last year, a little over a year ago, with his first book, Diary of a Young Naturalist, chronicling an extraordinary year of your growing up, Dara. And we last spoke last summer for Bird Fair, I think it was, when Diary of a Young Naturalist was absolutely riding high. And now here we are. You have a second book to be talking about a year later, and we're still doing it online, which is who'd have thought that?
Yeah.
But yes, so a bit of a mixture of events. How are you finding the comparison?
Like the comparison between
the face-to-face and the online.
I must admit, like they're two completely different experiences. Like I don't usually like talking to people, so sometimes online is like I can sort of like I don't have to talk to anybody after an event, so it's kind of nice. I could just sort of disappear. But it's also so like really good to like actually chat with people when I force myself to do it, and like the comparison for me is that social aspect, which I think you do get a lot more of in the online, not online, in live. So it is completely different. Like it was hilarious. A bunch of the people who were like talking out there, like behind the stage, like we were all going like, I've completely forgotten how to do this.
Well, that's great, because I think we all feel it. You know, it is particularly when you're thrust into environments where there might be people that whose books you've read yourself, or you've seen presenting this kind of thing, and suddenly there they are in real life. And I've certainly found that you find everyone is a little bit kind of on edge and uncertain of themselves, and that insecurity, sort of their insecurity definitely helps me, and maybe it's the same for you. We're all insecure on the inside. So last year when we spoke, you had been nominated, or Diary of a Young Naturalist had been nominated for the Wainwright Prize, which it subsequently went on and won, along with a whole clutch of other amazing awards. Most recently, the 2021 British Book Award for nonfiction, which you beat Barack Obama to that one. How did that feel?
That one felt surreal and bizarre, because I was like I remember like getting onto the shortlist and it was like really, really pleased, and then I looked at the shortlist and I was like going, yeah, I'm not winning this one. It's like I sort of like sunk it, and I was like going, okay, oh well, there's Barack Obama and David Attenborough, and I was just like, oh yeah, this, I feel a little bit leagues away from these people. And then I won it, and it was really hilarious the way that they did it, because they set it up as a interview for the shortlisters like months in advance, like, and they sort of just brought me on, and then they were like, yes, also you won, and I was just like
absolute joy. Fantastic. And one of the interesting things is, well, interesting and heartwarming is that the awards have not only come from the industry, you've won books awards nominated by readers as well.
Yeah.
So literally the world loves this book. Everyone loves this book.
Yeah, so I won the Books Are My Bag award, which is voted on by readers, which like that's almost better than sometimes the judges one, because the judges one have all sorts of possible prejudices and biases and all that sort of stuff, because you're only looking then at a few people. But when it's like lots and lots of people, like the scientific bit of my brain is going like, this is more accurate data. And so that makes me feel a lot. It does make you feel really warm inside that people actually like your book.
Absolutely. So I'm going to address it a little bit from the diary, and I've been revisiting it in the last few days, knowing that I was going to be speaking to you again, and looking particularly at the sections from this time of year, because it was 3 years ago now, wasn't it, that you were writing? It's 2018, and you were about to move house, and there was anxiety.
Wait, no, it was free. What am I doing? My knowledge of time is a.
I know the feeling. Well, time has been weird of late, hasn't it?
Yeah.
So you were about to move house, and there was a lot of anxiety associated with that, and a sort of anticipation of grief of losing some of those familiar places. And I really empathise with that. I have that. I hate leaving. I have a sense. It's almost a panic, isn't it, that you might lose that connection. And I think we forget that we have this the capacity that we have to remember, and the way that places and moments and connections just become part of us. And I know you understand that, because later on there's a passage, and I'm going to quote from it now, where you'd spent a day in the mountains and described a sort of physical exchange that you have with place. And you said afterwards, I feel as if I'm back there still, with the small mass of experience on my skin. Firstly, what a sentence that is. For people that haven't yet read the book, it's full of gems like that just sort of live on with you.
Do you know what it made me realize? You know, when those little lines made me change how I read books, because now I go, whenever I read a little gem in a book now, like a little line gem, I'm going like, the author had a little weep after doing that one. They're like, yes, I could see them doing it now, and so which is quite, because I did that after a few of those lines. It's like, yes, a little bit of like.
This is obvious that you find the writing as a way of sort of curating your own experience and setting it, processing it a little bit. How does that process work for you? How soon after an experience like that will you settle down and write about it?
No, that depends. So if I remember my notebook, which is rare, then I'll write it down. I'll observe, and I'll do note taking. Usually I'm horrifically forgetful about these sort of things. But how it usually would happen would be, whenever I have an idea, or usually in the hours after going to a place, I have loads of notebooks scattered around, and I just write inside those randomly. So they're very disorganized, just scattered around the house, sort of. And then just collect up all the notebooks, and then sort of put it out into a write it all out, and then try to squish it and squeeze it and sculpt it a little bit. So there is a process to it. But the actual writing and ideas originally, they happen pretty close to the events that happen. And if I remember my notebook, then it happens I'm just writing.
And do you find that when you're writing, that the experience, what the experience means to you, becomes clearer, or are you aware of it at the time?
Yeah, it definitely. Because I don't really get everything the first time round, so I have to process it again. And writing allows me to process stuff again. It allows me to re-experience it in a sort of way, so I can catch up all of the little details that I missed. And that's the one that I remember. Then it's like I've got like this almost like secondary sort of form of like experiencing the world, and writing allows me to do that because I have to like put myself back into what I was feeling, so I get to do it all over again.
That's very familiar. That's very familiar. And it brings it to life so beautifully for your readers. You're sort of interpreting the experience for us. And are you aware of that, or do you very much sort of relive it for yourself, or are you thinking, what about this might people be interested in reading?
Not really, honestly. Like I think I pay, like, honestly, my attention to audience is minimal, probably, because I sort of just think, write what comes into my head.
It comes across very much that way, that it's so the sort of the truth, the honesty of it is very apparent.
Yeah, so I because it was a diary, it had to be written in a way that never would see an audience.
Yes,
That
of course.
So there was no intended audience. There is no intended audience for a diary, except that, like, the metaphysical identity essence of the diary, like who you write to. It's kind of funny that we write to this we all seem to write to this like imaginary creature called the diary when we write a diary. So I didn't really want to think about an audience in that sense, because it was more just a diary. Does that sort of make sense?
It does make sense. It totally makes sense. So so in terms of what you're getting out and about doing now, what have been your nature experiences of this year in your new place? And well, it's not that new now, is it? But,
yeah. So we moved again. God, we're like a nomadic people, our family. Like, it was only like 10 miles up like a few miles up the road. So we're now beside the coast, which is amazing. So I can sort of I've been spending a lot of time at the beach. Calling it a beach is a bit of a generous statement. More like rocky.
I think it's still a beach. Yeah.
It's basically a beach. I've just been spending all my time there looking at shrimps. And there's also been some swallows that have like nested in the shed. And there's been quite intense because the goldfinches have been trying to fight the swallows, which is completely bizarre.
Yeah, that's an interesting dynamic, because they're not competitors for food.
I don't understand why. The goldfinches are a little bit like rowdy, so it's like they sort of like beat up whoever they want. There's so many
celebrity birds. I think that's it. They're both equally gorgeous, aren't they? I wouldn't want to choose between either of them. So another passage from the book that has stuck with me, and it's about leadership. And I've been thinking a lot about leadership recently. We've just been watching the G7, the supposed leaders of the world. And you wrote something after your first climate strike and you said, what doesn't sit well, though, is the search for leaders, climate leaders, young leaders. The expectation seems preposterous. It appears I'm now one of them. Just one single act of walking out and I've been crowned. It doesn't sit easy. It's not me at all. So in this era now, a couple of years further on, era of activism and social media, I find myself wondering who is leading. Actually, is it the government here or elsewhere? Is it the G7? Is it the Murdoch press? Is it Marcus Rashford or Greta Thunberg? Or is it us? And I wondered how you felt about this, that sort of changing. It is leadership changing, and are you still as averse to the idea of it as you were when you wrote those words?
I think the idea, what was in those words, was the idea of the preposterousness to put young people, especially young people, and asking them to lead the world when the problems weren't made by us and the issues aren't being solved by the grown-ups who are being solved by the actual leaders, and then they're almost sort of crowning these new leaders of community and society to try and solve the problems that they've messed up in. So that's why I found preposterous. Government and leaders are supposed to lead. That's kind of like the entire job description. And they're supposed to do policies that work for the betterment of all of the people that live in that country. And so that's sort of what I believe in. And the fact that they sort of want to shift from government, who are the leaders, being leaders. This is like the entire conservative pool of thought, is leaders don't be leaders. Communities make their own leaders to lead for us. That's basically, and that feels bizarre to me, because that can just end in rife with corruption and exploitation, and there's no barrier to corruption at that point. So I feel like it could lead down a very toxic path if we start like almost like there's no structure to it in that way. So, but what I do want to see are people is going in. We have this system, and like where the government helps people, and they help better the world, and so that's sort of why I found preposterous, is that they're almost forcing the issues that they haven't solved onto people who are mostly like half their age.
Young people who are asking for leadership rather than
we're asking for it.
Yeah.
Rather than wanting to actually be it, until we have more experience, honestly, and until we can grow ourselves into those leadership roles. That's basically it. We don't want to be leaders. We want to have voices. That's a different thing. We want to have a voice for change, but we need the governments, and we need the people who are in charge to actually take that leadership and make those policies and those changes that the world desperately needs.
And of course, the world has been. We've all been from that position where we was really the climate movement was building, the campaign for biodiversity was building, and then we've all been sideswiped in the last 18 months by the pandemic. But we've also seen that got a real sense of what can be done when that imperative is really recognised by leaders. And in amongst dealing with the pandemic and seeing that the drastic changes that can be taken, we've also had some extraordinary activism, some good words from governments, from leaders on crises other than the pandemic, and some action and some sanity in the White House, for example, and with COP26 on the horizon. We have hope, but at the same time, again, carbon emissions are rising at an almost unprecedented rate after last year, and the scale of these steps forward and steps back is across the board. They're happening on all scales, from campaigns like No Mow May, where we were seeing some glorious wildflowers springing up, and then the next day people showing, but then my local council came along and mowed it. So there's little small scale bits of progress and tragedy, right up to the planetary scale. And I don't know, I just find that very exhausting. Good mixed in with the bad. It feels like we might be getting somewhere, and there is hope sort of beyond a door, and we're not pushing hard enough on that door. How do you feel about the prospects for the issues that matter most to you at the moment? Setting aside the pandemic, but using that as an example for how fast we can act. How do you feel about the prospects for the climate, for biodiversity?
So first of all, I do have hope that we can fix it, because without hope, we wouldn't do anything, because like we'd just be buried in pessimism and nihilism, and it would just, you wouldn't get anything done if you don't believe that there's a way to succeed. First of all, so I do have hope that we can make a better world. Like, we need to act like right now. But I also like to try and focus in on the good that's happening in the world as well. I'm sorry, I'm completely distracted. There's like starling chicks, fledglings. They're just like sort of that are sort of like pecking at each other. Sorry.
I'm going to introduce we've got a crazy Dunnock at the moment who keeps, he's made himself bald by headbutting the window because he can see this other bird there. And we've put things on the window to try and deter him. And he's still going, he's still singing beautifully, but he looks astonishingly bad because he's got this little bald black head. And I don't think he realizes that, he looks like a disaster because he is still going. But yeah, I understand how distracting that kind of thing can be.
Yeah. But I do think that focusing in on the good is a really strong way of like coping, because the world is a beautiful, beautiful place, and focusing in on that, like, instead of watching the news, because the news is always depressing. Like, even in the best of times, the news is depressing because it only generally focuses in on the bad. So if we focus in on the good things that are happening in the world, while also demanding change, we can, and showing how we can make the world a better place, I think it becomes a lot less exhausting. And sometimes I would much rather if people who like post out all of these horror stories of nature, sometimes it's just like, okay, you've posted like this message on Twitter and like maybe complaining to the council, but have you sent the council a letter about it? Usually the answer is no, but they've posted it on Twitter, making all of the Twitter users, and Twitter is an echo box, so you're most likely preaching to the converted. You're just making them feel a little bit sad. Like, and so it, like, you're sort of dispersing this like aura of like, oh, what's the point? And like just this miasma of just despair, instead of like posting really positive stuff. And whenever you see that, like, take your council to town with letters and stuff. But most of the people on Twitter that you encounter, like, with the way that social media works, is you meet people who are generally of the same disposition as you. That's just the way of like stuff like Twitter, and Facebook, and so like spread a little bit of happiness. That feels like Twitter is dramatized almost. It's like this is a big thing that I found with Twitter. It's always about what's going wrong. It's like, so sometimes I think we need to celebrate what's going right. That's what makes sense. That's a way of like keeping down the exhaustion levels. Although I still need to take a break off Twitter like every month. So it's like,
that is extraordinary wisdom, I have to say. I'm definitely one of these people that needs to take a break from time to time, and I know you have as well. But finding a way to sort of live with it and manage it in an ongoing way, that's great wisdom. So in terms of talking about hope of the future, I think this is a good time to talk about your new book, Wild Child, which arrived with me last week. Copy of it here. And and first off, it looks absolutely spectacular. I mean, just the cover. I think this ongoing or blossoming relationship, expanding relationship that you have with Barry Falls as an illustrator is really.
Yes, because Barry Falls illustrated the cover of the hardback diary.
Right. Yeah. And he's, gosh, he's really proud here. how did that? Do you know each other? I know he's Northern Ireland.
We met through the book, so we met through Diary. That's like how we came in contact, and we were just like, when we were looking for like an illustrator for Wild Child, we were just like, yes, we could use Barry again. It's like, and he blew us. It was incredible. Like you've seen the book, it's incredible. Like the artwork.
It's absolutely, it genuinely is a thing of beauty, and it's sort of kaleidoscopic, mixed up way in the way that when you are immersed in a habitat, that everything comes at you.
And it's so detailed because he uses the way that he forms all of his art in this sort of collage format, and he has like the individual elements that he's made that he sort of then fits all together. He can do this extraordinary level of detail that nobody will ever know the amount of detail because it's not high res enough on like the actual book. But if you look at the cover of Diary, you've got one behind you. If you look at the backpack of the there's two badges.
Yes.
One that is an Extinction Rebellion badge. The other one is an orange and red one. And only on the high res image, it says Undertones on it. And
so somewhere you have to have these blown up as sort of frescoes or something, a wall.
Yes, so it's like really tiny. It's a really tiny badge on a bag. It's like it says Undertones on it, and I remember zooming. Like,
I'm just really going to hold this in close to the camera so that hold on, that people watching can see the badges on the backpack. They are very small.
Like they're very famous.
Fuzzy on the. I'm not sure the camera would cope with that, but
and like the dandelions have barbs on them, like the little dandelions. See that? You can actually see the little like it's incredible the detail, level of detail on this. I just recommend anybody just get it.
And that seems to be very much the way you experience the natural world as well, where you you do home in on these incredible details. So what an appropriate collaboration.
So tell
me a little bit about how this book came about.
So this book came about because Macmillan wanted a picture book, basically, and I wanted to do a picture book because if anybody's read Diary, they know it's pretty. It can be a bit. It's quite heavy. It's quite a heavy book. It's a bit dark at times. It's a bit drudgy at times. Like there's
it's intense. I wouldn't say
it's intense. Like there's definitely some happy moments in it, but it's pretty intense. So I was just like, you know what? I want to do a happy, nice, light-hearted, complete polar opposite of the Diary in that respect. A really nice, happy, cheery book, and like a picture.
It's also intense, though. I think it has that signature McAnulty intensity.
Oh, it still has the the intensity of my writing. But like when you have a red, cute reds like that, then you like it's so good. Like I remember when I first saw the illustrations for this, I was just like, it was because like you get like a spread, like the spreads would come out like really slowly. So I saw the book like sort of forming, and it was like it was like a
very different process to the.
You know when you get like multiple trailers for a film and you can sort of build up a picture. Yeah, that was sort of what I was like. I could sort of see it like build up. Which was amazing.
What I found about, and there's a lot of nature books for kids at the moment because we all want our children to be interested in nature, and the sort of the publishing industry generates them by the wagon load. But what I found was genuinely different about this is the mix of science and the creative side of it. You really mixed reference and the reference aspect and the poetic. And not just blended. You haven't written a poetic reference book. The spreads sort of alternate in style and space and pace. And that's that. How do you imagine the readers will consume those different pages? Because that's a fantastic style.
I'm not entirely sure how people may react to it. But basically, what I feel like there's two ways of reading the book. I'm like reading a spread a night sort of thing, like just engrossing yourself in a spread because the book is meant to be told as a bedtime story, basically. Like
there is very much a story element to it.
Yeah, and like I honestly believe that picture book is for parents as much as it is for children. So it starts off with a prose section. So they usually look a little bit like this. It's got the writing and it's all pretty much like that. Then it goes into like facts about the creatures that I mentioned in the prose, because I don't actually say what the creatures are in the prose. I sort of leave people to fill in the blanks by putting in the facts on the next page about
that really captivated me, actually, the way that you described the immersion in the sensory experience of encountering those animals without hanging a label on straight away. And later on we learn,
then filling in the knowledge. Because that was the intention of the book, was to put myself back into the eyes of a child, having absolutely no idea what's going on and what are those initial senses, what are those initial experiences that are sort of hitting you as you first go into the natural world. Then you go into like a sort of more fun little section that's like various areas throughout science, like language, like this one's about like collective nouns. It's pretty fun. Others are like about migration and metamorphosis. So it's all that sort of, like, some of the stuff I believe should be taught at this age, at really young ages. But some of the stuff isn't even taught until A level, which is insane to me that biology is dumbed down so much.
So your education's been a mixture of homeschool and mainstream schooling, hasn't it? So do you think?
Like I had like a few weeks of homeschool.
Oh right, okay.
It's not a lot of homeschool.
But your home life is full of education, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes. And then the activity as well. So
it strikes me that this is the kind of book you would have liked as a
absolutely. I would have loved this book. Like this would have been the sort of book that I saw. That's sort of why I wrote this book, because this is the sort of book that I would have wanted when I was a young child. Like stuff to do, like stuff to make and do all with my hands, and like try to work away lots and lots of knowledge and facts. Like, because my favorite 3 words when I was like, actually they still are, did you know? The random strangers. Did you know that?
And you're still doing it now.
The neutron star spins at 33% of the speed of light.
Great.
Random stuff like that. Yeah. So I just wanted to intersperse it with facts as well.
Would you like to read us a little bit from it, Dara?
Okay, I'll read the first bit of prose. Wait a second. Actually, you know what? I'll really tease it. I'll read the introduction. Windows to see the world through. Let me give you new windows to see the world through. Flashes of color will become clear. You will see every detail, every delicate shade, every movement. Here, let me help you. It may be raining, but we can still see. Let's bring a chair to the window. Let me grow you. What can you see? God, I haven't read actually out of this. Wait a second. How did I know? I started fumbling there. I literally recorded the audiobook like a week. Yeah, there's an audiobook for a picture book, which I found. And if you wanted to see what the spread looks like to like connect it, that's sort of what it is. That was the sort of first spread that I ever saw. And if you notice, Rosie is in every single of the big spread, section spreads. So Rosie is making a return. As a returning character.
Wonderful. And lovely how it you've started with that sort of in the house, started in the middle of domestic life and sort of gradually venturing further and further afield. It is beautifully done. What were the books that inspired you at that sort of age, the age that you imagine the readers of Wild Child might be? What were you reading?
So I did not read fiction at this point in time. There was no fiction in my life until I was 10. So I think the closest I came to like proper fiction at that point would probably be like Greek stories, or but that was only like when I was like 9. But so books like if anybody knows the Big Bang book, it's called The Big Bang. Absolutely favorite book. It was the one that really got me into science, into the sciences as a whole. I loved like the amount of fact books I read is ridiculous. If you've ever been into a library and you see the eyewitness books, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, yes.
I've read every single one.
That's something.
And anybody who knows the eyewitness books knows that there is a lot of eyewitness books. So I would go like into the library in Belfast and just like take one out, and there was every time I was in the library. So that was sort of my thing.
And what was it that drew you to them particularly? Was it just, did you like the familiarity of a familiar structure to a book, or?
Because they had loads of facts in it, honestly. It was just sort of, it was also like a comfort
that you could accost strangers with later on.
Like, it sort of was just, I actually like the eyewitness books because I like choosing the same thing multiple times. Like, it's been like this throughout my life. I dislike stuff that's like one-off. Like, anywhere like I don't like a single film. I like book series. I like really, really long TV series, which is probably why I love Star Trek, because like there is an infinite number of episodes. I think there's like over 1,000 episodes of Star Trek. Like, so I love really long stuff that I can sort of, I know what's going on, because I hate jumping into stuff for the first time. So that's why I probably struggled with getting into fiction, was because of that lack of familiarity that I needed. And so that's sort of what I grew up with fact books on all sorts of manner of things. I especially loved. There's another book. It's like a mushroom identification guide, which I loved. Like there was a lot of identification guides. I guess fiction, like the only fiction I had exposed to me at that time would be like picture books. That would be like read to me. Like,
yeah. And what about now? What are you reading now?
At the moment, I'm reading Lord of the Rings, which is like because I have like a summer reread of Lord of the Rings, so it's like.
And you get through the whole thing in a summer. That's pretty good going.
Like I try to get through it like in the first month, because I do want to read other things. But that's sort of what I do. Like that's what I'm sort of doing at the moment. I've also got a few science books because I'm doing like university research for like trying to get all my books in order. So I've got a whole stack, and I'm also researching for another new book called Wanderings of a Young Naturalist, because when I get a name, I stick with it. And it's basically just going to be an exploration of Celtic mythology, because that was the first proper fiction books I read were on mythology, and how stories connect with the landscape going, and how humans connect with the landscape and stories, and how they all sort of interlink. So I was going to go to loads and loads of different places around Ireland and go visit them and see what's how the stories influence them. Of course, like COVID happened, so that there was like a sort of issue there. I couldn't go anywhere to go to the places, but well, it will get released at some point.
Well, I will be first in the queue, because that sounds absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Just you're so rooted in the natural world, but also in the history, and that was obvious. That was sort of that theme ran through the diary as well. That sort of connectedness that you feel with the people that have come before. Really, the extraordinary passage that opens the winter section, or in December somewhere, there's where you're walking through a hollow way towards a stone circle and feeling the influence.
That is one of my favorite sections of the book.
Me too.
Like most of the diary sections of the book were like written pretty like in a day or stuff like that. I spent like a week trying to work that one out because like I took a lot of passion into that one. It was my favorite. Like I love winter it's the best season of the book in my opinion because I learned how to write at that stage.
Oh boy, you did. Yeah, and it definitely felt that you were at home in that section. Really in a wonderful way. And so you mentioned university. Is this what's lying in your immediate future? What does the rest of your 2021 look like?
I don't know. I have about as many. I don't really know what I'm doing at the moment. I'm doing like the research for the book. I'm sort of preparing because I get my A level, my AS results, which don't actually. Sorry, this year's education has been an absolute nightmare. But I get some kind of results for something that may or does not count for next year, but they still wanted a full examination. Anyway, I get some results in August, but I'm going to be mostly trying to get research, do like events and stuff, interspersed throughout that, try and visit all the places to get that research for the book, and also like just write a lot more, read. Honestly, the amount of plans I have are quite small because like I'm terrified of making plans at this point because like everything's been so. I hate it when plans like fail. I'm terrified of like making a plan and then something changing and then it's just like, oh my goodness me, and it's horrible. So that's sort of where I am at the moment.
Sometimes that's not a bad thing to have, to have an open diary and have the opportunity to just change your mind, I guess. And follow your heart a little bit.
Yeah. But yeah, I've sort of planned to have the summer mostly free-ish to sort of because like the last year's been pretty intense.
Yeah.
So I'm just sort of like trying to work into a writing flow again.
Well, I'm sure you will find that groove and the space for it. And I also can't not mention the fact that your young sister has also ventured into writing. There's a book on the shelf behind me, Women on Nature, the anthology, which has a piece from
like, it's hilarious. So do you know what's really hilarious about that piece? It comes from the blog originally, and it's the most popular blog that I never wrote.
Oh, so there's a little bit of competition already in the Macanalty.
Basically, that like it's miles ahead of all of my blogs. It's hilarious. on like the view count, which is I just find it absolutely hilarious that my sister beat me on my own blog.
That's brilliant. Well, good on her.
Good on her. It's
and your whole family. I mean, it's very obvious from everything that I've read by you how central your family life is to we are all a product of our families, but for you, truly formative and truly just heartwarming. The closeness that you all have and the way you share your experiences is wonderful to read about, and so they must be incredibly not only proud of you, but they must feel sort of part of the whole experience, part of this whole experience that you've been.
Where we sort of we're gonna go through this all like as a unit, and they've been so supportive, and it's been all amazing. I was only slightly joking about the tired.
No, I can understand that. It's been a roller coaster.
It's definitely been a roller coaster.
Well, I might let you have a little rest in that case. Thank you so much for talking to us. Hopefully, the next time we get to do this will be in real life, somewhere, maybe in a sweaty tent at Bird Fair or the like, as these events start to get going again. But yes, it's a shame that you're not actually in Bradford, but nor am I. It's not that far away from me, but maybe another year.
Maybe another year.
Books down the line, we'll be able to do this again.
Yeah, definitely.
Great. Well, good luck with the research for the next book, and thank you so much for
thank you so much for having me.
And so we should just put these two beauties side by side on the screen. So Diary of a Young Naturalist, which is out now also in paperback, and Wild Child, the slightly bigger little brother. To the two books. I can't recommend them enough. Certainly, Diary is on a lot of shelves of people I know already, because I have thrust it into many hands, and I will be doing so the same with Wild Child, because I know several young people that will love it, and as will their parents. Thanks ever so much, Dara. I'll see you again soon.